Y'all, I read The Writing Retreat. I want to unpack that here.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soul spoken.
It's going to have spoilers, but I still want to talk about it. And I love videos like this when a book has spoilers because, like, all I've heard people say about this book is it goes off the rails, and it does go off the rails, but I think knowing how it goes off the rails may help you decide if you really want to read it. I did give it 5 stars, so I had a great time, but I definitely could see, like, if it's not what you're expecting, that this could be a book that you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. So, I don't remember the point of view character's name. I think it's Ashley, but I'm not sure. And she, not too long ago, had a friendship breakup with her friend, Ren. So they had been really good friends living together, and at some point they had a romantic encounter, and that made Ren uncomfortable, and she left, even though Ren had been the one to instigate it. And now they're like enemies. So they both are writers, and there is this really famous writer, I don't remember what her name is now, who is hosting a contest. She wants writers to submit their books, and she's going to pick 4, it ends up being 5 because of reasons, but 4 writers to come on this exclusive writing retreat with her, where she's gonna, like, a month-long writing retreat where she's gonna supposedly share her secrets. Everything's gonna be great. Well, our POV character and Ren both get chosen for this writing retreat along with 3 other girls. And they go, and the girl who's running the retreat is like, hey, you're going to be competing, you're going to be writing, and we're going to critique your work here, and you're going to be competing. The person who has the best novel at the end of the month is going to get a really good publishing deal, and this and that and this. So, of course, everybody is like writing like crazy, and they have to do like 80,000 words in a month. I just recently did NaNoWriMo, and that sounds by itself torturous and hellish. So, like, I was on for the, yes, this is a horror book. That many words in a month? Are you crazy? So, writer perspective on that, like, holy cow, that's a lot. In NaNoWriMo, for people who don't know, writers commit to writing 50,000 words in a month. It's a lot. I failed last time. I fail most of the time. Still try every year. I've beat it a couple times, but like to do that is really hard. So anyway, these writers commit, and then our POV character, she decides to write a book about the house that they're staying in. The house that they're staying in has like a mystery involved. There was a girl who was into some kind of demonology, witchcraft stuff, who later was found, her and her husband were found dead in the house with no explanation. And people felt it had to do with this demon. So she takes inspiration and decides, hey, I'm going to use this house as an inspiration for my story and start writing. So we get little excerpts of her story along with the main story. Things start off pretty typical. There's a little bit of infighting and bickering, and like Ren kind of steals one of her stories, and they get into a little bit of a fight. The the lady who's running the retreat does some kind of icky, underhanded things. Like at one point early on, she makes them go down in the basement, either with candles or without candles, to try to scare them or stimulate their creativity. A little bit later, you have, she has drugged them. She's put LSD in their drinks. And that's kind of actually where things start to change from like the typical writing retreat, which is interesting, cool, all the stuff I've told you so far, to just off freaking rails. So there is drugs happening. And Poppy, one of the other writers, tells our POV character, she's like, "Hey, I think you know this thing. You're right. We've got to go find it out." And she's like, "Oh, okay. What are you talking about?" And she's like, "We're all high, so who knows?" So they go down to the basement and they get separated. And our POV character goes off and has what she thinks is demon sex. Yeah. Again, she's high on LSD. She doesn't know. She wakes up in the morning, is back in her bed, but Poppy is missing. And there's like looking around, there's some indication that she might have gone out in the snow. And so everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, we've got to call the police," because they have been blizzarded in. So they're like, "We got to call the police. We got to find Poppy," and they're like, "We can't go out. We don't have the proper attire. We don't know where she's gone. There's only footsteps like to hear." And so the lady who runs it is like, "I will call the police and, just sit tight, make sure we search the rest of the house. But, I I don't know that we can do much until the snow fixes and we need to focus on our books." So the POV girl is starting to think about things and like, something feels kind of wrong. So she goes back down to the basement and finds this weird panel. And she's like, "I bet this is what Poppy wanted to show me." And then she's like, that everybody's trying to like go through the day, but then they're like, "Oh my gosh, Poppy's out there freezing." And so they go back to the lady and they're like, "Are the police coming?" And she's like, "Well, they said they would, but they can't because they got this and that to do." And they're like, "You need to call them again." So our POV character follows this lady to like the I don't know what it's called, her study that's supposed to have the radio. And she notices this lady does not call anybody. She's like, "Oh crap, something's going on. Something is happening." And they're like, "Is this a stunt that she's pulling to make us write better or what?" And like for a really long time, you kind of wonder that. You're like, this lady gave you LSD. So like, is all of this just to make you write better or is shit going down? Shit's going down, but you don't know that. So then the girls are like, okay, and they start exploring. And I don't remember exactly how things go down, but our POV character finds Poppy. She is in a cage and has been like since the night that they got separated. And she ends up in the cage too. And then the lady who runs the writing retreat, well, Poppy tells her, but then also Poppy tells her, "Hey, the lady running this writing retreat, she's not who she seems. She isn't a writer. She has been killing people and taking their stories. Well, she killed 2 people and took their stories, and then I don't know where the other stories came from." So then you have the other Ren and one of the other girls end up down in the cage with them too. And then one of the girls is like an operative for the author lady. So one of the girls who was posing as a writer, she had given one of her books to the famous author lady because they were girlfriends, but she wasn't but now she's like trying to keep these girls in cages cuz they're going to write their great American novel and she's going to publish it. Now, presumably she's going to murder them. They don't really know what's going to happen. She's like, "Well, I can contract you so that, you can never tell anybody that I published your book, but, we're still going to do this." And she's like, "And if you don't write your books, you're not going to eat." And so like they're down there trying to, write to keep up so they keep getting fed and they're cold and Ren's got pneumonia. And they keep being like, "You have to do this and this and this so that we will, give you blankets and give you things. And, if you don't do it, we're going to take stuff away and you're going to start dying." So, anyway, then a thing happens and Poppy tries to escape and they murder Poppy. The other girl who's with them manages to get out and she goes into the woods, but she is shot by one of the people working for the author. So now it's just Ren and the POV girl. And like they realize that they're still friends, not necessarily romantic, but they still care about each other and don't want each other to die. But we're at the last day of the retreat, and the lady's like, okay, I've decided one of you is going to be able to live. You have to kill the other. And so they decide they're going to do that. And then the girl who we thought was dead, who was shot, apparently one of the people who works at the house has been like taking care of her, so she didn't actually die. So she comes in and stirs stuff up, and they ultimately everybody dies except for the writer who the the main writer, like her little girlfriend dies, and then the housekeeper dies, and then the kitchen staff dies. And then the girl who seemed like she died, she didn't die, she just was really messed up. But they do ultimately overpower this lady, but she doesn't, she gets away. She gets away and, runs away, and then they become published authors. So it really goes off the rails. It's a little bit like, as I was reading it, I've got some Scream vibes, I've got some Saw vibes, I've got some Misery vibes. I loved the authory parts of this book. It was so fun. And it was so fun because it's like, how far would you go to be an author? How far would you go to be famous? How far would you go to have your works out in the world? And do I think this book was realistic? No. But I thought it was a good, fun horror. And then there's also an element of, was there paranormal spirits involved in helping them escape? Because, like, we find out that sex with the demon wasn't a thing, but we do like have some other stuff going on. And so it's like, oh, was there supernatural stuff involved in this, or was it all just them? So yeah, I read the writing retreat. That is what happens in the writing retreat for those of you who like are debating if you want to read it. I don't I don't want to say don't read it because I thought it was great. I gave it a 5 star. It's definitely a little crazy, and if you're just looking for like a real chill, you know, a closed door mystery, this is not it. This is way too off the walls. And I think if you go in with the right expectations, you can have a good time. I had a great time. I didn't know what to expect, and I was so shocked by everything going off the rails, but I had a great time with it. So, it did kind of give me Riley Sager vibes because I've only read a couple Riley Sager books, and so far, that's kind of what Riley Sager does too. I'm like, I don't know what I'm getting into, and then stuff will just happen. I'll be like, okay, well, that's crazy, Riley. Thanks, friend. But it's a good time. All right, so if you've read The Writing Retreat, did you like it, or did you go, oh my gosh, what was this? What did I even read? Because I definitely have seen it being very divisive. Some people love it, and some people are like, this went off the rails and is trash. I was a love it. Maybe you weren't. So tell me about it in the comments. If you have read other really good mysteries involving writers, let me know, because I love stories about writers because I'm a writer. So I'd love to hear other really good stories that you've read involving writers. I have read Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I've read Misery by Stephen King, so don't mention those. But other books, like, I'm open. I'd like to read more books like this, at least like with characters like this. So yeah, it was a good time. This has been Jane. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.